Hello, this is our Eagle Lead presentation focusing on community engagement within the School of Education. Eagle Lead stands for Leadership, Engagement, and Development and is a speaker series debuting on campus this semester. Throughout Eagle Lead, each college at the university will have 3 feature weeks, including an introduction, a leadership topic, and the speaker from the community, which is what we're doing this week. To conclude the School of Education's presentations, we have Northside Elementary Principal Laura Huber and Hamilton Elementary Principal Ben Burns. After they're finished presenting, we'll ask a couple of questions and then wrap up. So you guys are all good to go.
Okay, and I'm going first, right? Okay, all right. Well, thank you for having me. I will speak a little bit about my own professional journey and how I got to where I am today. I actually started out at UW-Madison in the College of Engineering because I love math and science. And I quickly realized while I love math and science, I had a stronger passion for helping people and working closely with individuals. And so I ended up getting a psychology degree and before I realized I wanted to work in schools. And at that point, it was kind of too late to switch. But I found out about school psychology, which seemed to be a natural fit, combining my passions of helping people specifically within the school system and also kind of that science technical aspect as well. And so I came here to UW-La Crosse for grad school for school psychology. And after 2 years in that program, then I got a job as a school psychologist in Tomah, Wisconsin. And I worked at all different ages and whatnot in Tomah. And then after 2 years there, got a job in La Crosse. And I spent the next 5 years at Central High School as a school psychologist there. And I had a great opportunity to get involved with a lot of different things at Central. But at some point in time, I felt this nagging feeling that kids were coming into high school reading at a third grade level, hating school. And 4 years later, they left reading at a third grade level, hating school. And it really started to be kind of a tough pill to swallow in terms of what are we doing for our most vulnerable students? And that really inspired me to want to kind of get upstream and have a more proactive impact in my career. And then I decided to go back to school at Viterbo to get my principal license. And I decided didn't just want to be a principal, I wanted to be an elementary principal, work with the younger students, which I had done in Tomah before, but really there's a lot of research out there along the lines of it takes 3 times as much resources to change a child's life trajectory after third grade as it does before third grade. And so you've heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Anyways, and so I got my principal license at Viterbo, and then for some silly reason, because somebody thought it would be a good idea, I actually enrolled in another graduate program at the same time as I was doing that program. So I was in 2 grad schools at the same time, which I do not recommend. And that was a PhD program in educational leadership through UW-Madison again. And after getting my principal license, I left La Crosse and I got an associate principal job at an elementary school in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, right outside of Madison. And so we moved to Sun Prairie for a couple of years, and that was a great experience. It was a very good experience. It was very similar to La Crosse in many ways, but also very different in many ways. I was there 2 years before having the opportunity to come back to La Crosse. That wasn't my original intent when I left, but job opening came up at Hamilton here in La Crosse, and I had known about Hamilton from my time before, and it really was a great fit for me and for my passions, and was fortunate enough to get the job here. And so now I'm at my 3rd year here at Hamilton, and it is, again, like I said, it really combines a lot of the things that I'm really passionate about, and being able to do that at an elementary level, have a really proactive approach, but also we're in our 3rd year of being a community school. And I love the community school strategy and approach, in the sense that we are trying to be as proactive and as systems level in our approach to addressing student and family needs, community needs. There's a lot of other really cool benefits of that. We're also a year-round school, which is another strategy that I also really enjoy. And they say, jokingly, we say live in the dream, right? But when I think about after I had been, a professional, working professional for about 5 years, when I was about halfway through my time at Central, and I was no longer, brand new and just trying to survive each school year, what I wanted my impact to be and how I wanted to spend my time each and every day at work, and the type of change that I wanted to try to affect and build towards. And the a blessing and a challenge every day. And I really enjoy where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that was a really good, just short little recap there. And then if you would like to go.
Sure. Ben, I didn't know all those things about you. It's nice to hear that. Let's see now. Well, I started my career in Madison. I was a special education teacher, and I taught at the high school level for 4 years, and worked with students that were intellectually impaired, and they actually lived at the residential institution nearby, and would come into the school, and became interested in a little bit of like what Ben said about going upstream, and wondering if these students hadn't been institutionalized, and if we had started to think about what would be best for them in elementary school, what would that mean? And about the same time, I became interested to do what we called at the same time, at that time was mainstreaming, but having kids receive their, kids with special needs receive their education in the general ed classroom. So I switched down to the elementary so that I could pursue that interest. And then, and you'll see this is kind of a little pattern with me. So very quickly decided that in order to really learn about that and how to do it well, I actually needed to be a general education teacher. So I went back to school, and so I got my second, at that point it was a certification. So it was another 30 some credits, and they didn't give you another degree at that time. They just certified you. So then I taught general education for, I don't know, 15 or so years. And I'd had most of the kids at that grade level that had special needs would come through my classroom or not, because we would cluster a lot. Around about the same time came a lot of emphasis on how kids from different backgrounds were doing in math and science. And I became really intrigued by how we could do it better, because I was seeing that the math and science that we were teaching reached some kids, but not all kids. And anyway, so then started to explore about that and learn a little bit more. And I recognized that another thing that I really liked to do was to work with adults to become better teachers. So then I went downtown to our central administration building, and for 5 years I worked in the central administration building doing general math and a little bit of science, professional development, and then also with an area of expertise in intervention. So taking kids who were struggling even at the first grade level, and seeing if you could do some really high intense work with them and get them across certain identifiable hurdles that they needed to be there. And we knew that if they hadn't reached this certain level by about mid through second grade, that they that wasn't going to be something they could get beyond. They had to learn that stuff, and they were going to get stuck there. So anyway, that was a lot of research that I did on that thing. And then in the middle of that, in trying to put forward that program, I recognized that my capacity for actually bringing that about was being hampered by the fact that I didn't have an administrative license. And so I didn't have as much influence as I wanted. So I went back to school and got an administrative license. And then I ended up back at actually the old elementary school that I taught at and was the assistant principal there. I've always worked at schools that are high poverty. The school I was at, it was about 60%, 60 to 70% measures of poverty in that school. And it was a primarily bilingual school. So I was one of the few English speaking people there. And one of the few white people. So me and my blue eyes were a rarity in that school. And I liked it that way. And I felt like I really grew a lot as a person. I had to stretch. I had to really, really stretch. Well, and then eventually I wanted to be a principal because I wanted to influence more, and I had ideas about how things could go differently maybe, and searched around for a job and got a job in La Crosse. And I understand that, yeah, I had experiences of working in high poverty schools, bilingual education, and that was what pulled me to them because they were interested in that, and that was what they were interested in me. And so when I started at La Crosse, I was actually the principal of 3 different elementary schools that were housed across 2 buildings. And so we had to pass a referendum, build a school, had a lot of kind of monkey business along the way with that. That was exciting. And then, so as of now, then we've got 3 communities in 1 building that have melded into 2. I've got the conventional school, Northside, which is pre-K to 5, and then the Montessori, which is a charter school, which is also pre-K to 5. 2 very different communities, both relatively high poverty. So I still get to make an impact in doing what I know how to do. So this year, and like Ben mentioned over at Hamilton, some of the same initiatives have happened here, community school year round, having an opportunity to receive title funds and be able to impact kids on a larger level with really skilled intervention and make some change that way. So that's been a really exciting journey. We've spent a lot of time thinking about how teaming can benefit our kids and that kind of thing. So anyway, with all that being said, then this is my last year. I'm retiring at the end of the school year, or as I like to say, switching careers, because I can't really imagine not working right now. That's not in my DNA. So along the way, I guess in terms of degrees, I've got that undergraduate degree as a special education teacher, that 2nd certification in gen ed. I have a master's in curriculum instruction with an emphasis on science education and math education. And then I have another master's in educational leadership. The first 3 are from UW-Madison, and the last one is from Viterbo. So I think I'm done now with being in school. And it's time now to relax a little bit. So anyway, thank you for inviting me.
Well, and so now you teach.
Now I teach.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, yeah. So that actually was, people have said to me, what's next for you? And although I'm a little bit older than Ben, I don't think I'm over the hill. And I decided after a little bit of soul searching this fall with a couple of personal events that allowed me to think carefully and make sure that my values were on track with what I wanted to do. I realized that though I loved being a principal, I didn't want to end my career as a principal. I wanted to end it back in the classroom. And that's, so I want to end it as a teacher. I don't know how that's going to work out. So I'm sort of kind of launching myself out there in terms of, hope and a prayer that things work out. I think they might. And, but in any case, my plan is to end it teaching about what I love to do, which is work with kids and with grownups.
Awesome. So thank you guys both so much for sharing. I think like from your journeys and your stories, it's just evident that you care about and impact the community. So just one follow-up question I have for you is what ways do you think college students can get involved in the community and if possible in the schools in La Crosse?
You want to go, Ben?
Sure. There are probably any number of ways that someone could get involved, and that could range from paid employment. I know that the Boys and Girls Club of La Crosse is always looking for staff members. They have a lot of their staff comes from college students.
And the why?
And the Y is another great example. Park and Rec. Even some of our schools might have some tutor or volunteer options in our public schools when it's a better time for that. Right now with COVID, things are a little bit different in terms of the policies and procedures with visitors and volunteers and whatnot. But I would say that if you seriously want to get involved, there will be no shortage of both paid and unpaid opportunities in the community. And I guess my two additional thoughts about that, if we're thinking of advice for college students, and they're going to seem contradictory, my pieces of advice, but maybe each one will speak to somebody different. And the first thought is that if you have this vision of where you want to be, and don't even think about like a 30-year career, just think about like 5 years from now. If you have a vision about who you want to be, volunteering can be a fantastic way to get some experience and build a resume, even if you're not even making any money. It can be a fantastic way to get some really applicable experience towards kind of where you want to go. Like if you backwards map, okay, if in 5 years I want to be a special ed teacher, then maybe I should get some experience working in a school. The other thought that I have is that if you have no idea where you want to be 5 years from now, volunteering can also be a perfect fit for you. Volunteering out in the community, seeing what's out there, especially in the social services or human services sector, and whether that is getting a part-time job with Park and Rec or volunteering at the Y or the Boys and Girls Club at schools, you can really get a good feel. Because a lot of times, especially when young people, college age people, are trying to figure out what's next in my life, and you get close to graduation, it gets really, really scary. Sometimes people get paralyzed because they don't know what the right answer is. And that can be a really tough question to answer, but sometimes the best way to answer it is to start checking off what is the wrong answer, right? Because, well, okay, I went and volunteered with some little kids and they just scared me. They were a germ factory. I couldn't do it, couldn't handle it. Okay, well, I know that that's not for me, right? So experience can also be a great thing in terms of helping you find your way, but it can also help you like clearly get to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. I would second everything he said. And, one of the things that Ben and I get and people in education get is we get a daily dose of knowing we've made a difference in the world. And I think that's just a super gift to be able to have the gift of service, that we can provide service. And, there's a lot of things in our world that aren't wonderful and that can make you sad. But I get to go somewhere and I get to know that at the end of the day, I made it just a titch better. Maybe it's not a whole lot better, but it's a titch better. And I think that's a real gift. And I think anytime you're in a volunteer opportunity and giving service to the community, you also get an opportunity to make it just a little bit better. And I think that it can be easy to get a little jaded in this world because there's some things that aren't good. And we all know that. But to be able to give back is a way to help your own soul as well as the world. So.
Laura, you have a fantastic point there in about making the world just a little bit better place. I find it, I'm not sure what the right word is, maybe not funny, but interesting how in a lot of our graduation speeches, whether it's high school or college, we say, go out and change the world, right? But I mean, how many of us are going to be Mother Teresa or Gandhi and like have a lasting impact on the entire world and be, have their own chapter in history books? Like, no, very few of us are going to change the entire world. But I think sometimes we also get paralyzed because we don't see the difference between change the entire world and changing the world. And when I go to work and I help one child through a difficult day in their life, like I've changed the world for the better. And So that's a fantastic point, Laura. And we get that opportunity every single day.
Yeah, it's a gift. We're very lucky that way. So, and I also would agree about volunteering also as a way for a young person to see what they had, what their gifts are. And both of my kids are in college and have, they have many talents. Any mother would say that about her children, but I'd be right. But they do have many talents. But for a while there, one of them in particular kind of cast about and wasn't sure where it was, what was the best idea. Started doing a little volunteering, and just as Ben suggested, things started to congeal and it started to make a lot more sense. So I think that first of all, like I was talking earlier, I think the gift of service is a healing and something that makes you feel better and be better and do better. But then also it has that other aspect of helping you sort through what's the next step for you in very practical ways.
Yeah, thank you guys for answering on that. And then just one final thing is, as educators and administrators, how does community involvement play a role in your work? And then in what ways would you encourage future educators to get involved with the communities they live and work in?
I can take this one. So as Ben indicated, both of us are in community schools, and community school is a systemic intervention for making a difference in a community or in a group of people. We know that many times our kids who come from marginalized populations will have certain barriers that are extremely challenging for them or for their family in terms of accessing education. And then, of course, we know that education is a gateway to prosperity and independence. So we know that education is super important. And what a community school does is take a look at what are those barriers and what are the assets in the community, and be able to leverage the assets to overcome the barriers. And so I think that the community is critical to the success of our students. And our community has stepped up for everything from doing things like supporting families in getting laundry completed because it was hard to get a job if you don't have clean clothes, or bus tokens to get to a job, or looking at things like post-high school education or completing even high school education. These are significant barriers that our families face. And when our families face the barriers, the children do too. So having that as a resource for us allows our children to flourish, and our community as a result, our entire larger community to flourish. As far as the second question had to do with how the UW student could get involved in the community. Can you repeat that? Or
the second part was just, in what ways would you encourage future educators to get involved in the communities they live and work in? But I think you did talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think Ben also hit on that pretty well too.
So you've heard that it takes a village to raise a child, correct? I would encourage you to think about that in a very literal sense. And it's not necessarily the case everywhere, but what we have found in our neighborhoods, in our communities, where there is a lot of lack of access to fresh food, lack of affordable housing options, a lack of education and job career advancement opportunities, high crime rates, high CPS call rates, right? I mean, all of that data is tracked. And those are not necessarily the first things you might think of in terms of what a school is going to take on, right? I mean, you think like, okay, we got to teach them how to read and how to do math and how to write and, how to raise your hand if you have a question. Like, the community school model strategy, I should say, is really challenging that norm of school. This is your lane, stay in your lane, and the county social workers will stay in their lane, and the police officers will stay in their lane, and the healthcare providers will stay in their lane. It's taking that and it's challenging it, it's disrupting, it's throwing it all out. And it's essentially saying that like all of these things are connected. Okay. You may not think about housing, and you may not think about access to grocery stores. You may not think about those things when you think about schooling, but I'll tell you what, the way that those things or the lack thereof impact kids, it shows up each and every day when they're trying to learn. And so it has a very real impact on them. Now, I'm not saying that, we're not trying to say that we as the public schools have to be responsible for solving those things, but that's where this idea of working as a community and forming community partnerships really comes into play, because these are really big problems that we're talking about, and big problems take big solutions and a lot of collaboration and a lot of bringing systems together, bringing our healthcare systems, bringing our social work systems, bringing our public safety systems together, the city, the county, to look at these problems at a macro level and really see the patterns that are going on and try to address them systemically and proactively. And that doesn't mean that we do all the work as the public school, but it means that we kind of have this vision, and we create this shared vision with these community partners in terms of where we want to go as a whole community, and then what is each organization's role in that. And so as a student, if you're thinking about going into education, I strongly encourage you to look into these types of things. Even if you don't end up at a school that is technically a community school, pretty much all of our schools, even though we're the only two schools that are designated community school, they have different partnerships in place. They have different things going on with local businesses within their community. Now, each community has different needs. And even though we are only a few miles away, our communities are a little bit different. And, further down south or further out north or out on French Island, it's a little bit different community with a little bit different needs. And so at the same time, the same basic principle of it takes a village to raise a child, and coming at it from that holistic viewpoint is still very applicable, and something that I would encourage anyone who's interested in going in the field of education. I would almost say it is essential and required for you to have at least a bare minimum background knowledge on the different partnerships that could exist between a school and community partners, and what they might be able to accomplish, what those partnerships might be intended for.
Yeah, awesome. Those were the questions that I had, so I think I'll just quickly wrap up. Just thank you guys again for presenting and providing all the insight and information that you did.